This is the story of my father, Orland Bartholomew, and his midwinter exploration of the Sierra Nevada, perhaps the most ambitious ski mountain journey during the last century. He left Lone Pine on Christmas Day, 1928, and came out in Yosemite Valley of April 3rd, 1929. On the trip, on January 10th, 1929, he became the first man to make a recorded climb of Mount Whitney in the winter. He wanted to take photos of the High Sierra in the winter, doing winter photos, because it hadn't been done before. Photography was his prime aim. He stated that before he left on his trip. We have in a file someplace here 2 letters from Ansel Adams dated in the mid-1920s. They were talking about photography. There was no question in his mind could he successfully make the trip, because he had been living this kind of a life for several years prior to that as one of the early day stream gaugers and snow surveyors for the Southern California Edison Company. Greatest challenge, looking at the diary, was crossing the Knife Edge Harrison Pass. He had to cut steps with a little axe that he carried with him, cut steps and crawl, cut steps out of the ice, and it took him hours to cross Harrison Pass. Anybody who has ever been over Harrison Pass, summer or winter, you just can't imagine how difficult that would be. And he was there alone. He was crossing Fish Creek in Fresno County, and he fell through the snow and the ice and fell into the creek. And, you know, wet and cold in a winter storm, he couldn't even build a fire. So he put up his tent and he built a fire in his frying pan inside the tent where the wind wasn't blowing. And then he moved it outside and enlarged the fire so he could dry out a little better. He achieved several firsts mountaineering in the high country, and for myself, I've always liked stories about one man against the wilderness, and this is really a story that illustrates that. But he and my mother are buried in the simplest of graves at the little foothill cemetery at Toll House. And his will and it is just an outstanding example of man's will to do the impossible. And that pretty much sums it up.